It started like most weekends, quiet, unremarkable, stitched together with the soft rhythms of small-town routine. My brother had invited Zion over, like he often did. They'd grown up together, inseparable since middle school, bonded over football, broken curfews, and secrets I was too young to be let in on. I was the shadow that tagged along, barely noticed, until something shifted. Or maybe it had been shifting all along and I only noticed when we were finally alone. Zion had this easy kind of presence, low voice, steady movements, the kind of guy who never had to raise his tone to be heard. He smiled often, but not wide. And he always looked people in the eye like he meant every word. I used to watch him from the kitchen when he and my brother hung out, trying not to seem obvious. At 17, I wasn't sure what I was feeling, only that I felt too much around him and not enough around anyone else. The weekend he asked me to go fishing. It wasn't supposed to be just the two of us. My brother had planned it. But a last-minute shift at work left me and Zion alone on the porch with 2 fishing rods and an awkward silence between us. "We can still go if you want," he said, adjusting the strap on the cooler. "Just us, unless it's weird." I wanted to say yes and no at the same time. It was weird, but not in a bad way. I said yes. The lake was only a 15-minute drive away, a place we'd all gone to 100 times. Still, something about that day made it feel like uncharted water. The sky was low and gray, not stormy but soft, like it didn't want to intrude. We didn't speak much at first. He rowed us out gently, the rhythm of the oars the only sound between us. I watched the ripples trail behind us, pretending not to notice how close he was. "Your brother always talks about how quiet you are," he said suddenly. "Yeah?" I kept my eyes on the water. "I don't think you're quiet. I think you're just careful." The words stayed with me longer than I expected. No one had ever said that before. I didn't respond. I just looked at him, and he looked back, like he was trying to read something off my face that even I didn't know was written there. We cast our lines and let time pass without hurrying it. The fish weren't biting, and neither of us cared. It wasn't about fishing anymore. It was about something else, something stretching between us like a tight rope we weren't sure we should walk. He asked about my art. I asked about his college plans. He laughed when I got defensive about my favorite band. I rolled my eyes when he told me he still listened to CDs. The air between us thickened, not with tension, but with the weight of things unspoken. Every brush of our shoulders felt like a dare neither of us knew how to accept. At some point, he reached into the cooler and handed me a bottle of water. Our fingers touched. I froze. He didn't. Just smiled softly and turned his eyes back toward the lake. It was the smallest moment, and yet it echoed inside me like a bell. "I like days like this," he said. "No one asking anything of you. No pretending." "Pretending what?" I asked, even though I already knew. He didn't answer right away, just let the quiet linger. Then finally he said, "That you're not thinking things you shouldn't be thinking." My chest tightened. I nodded, almost imperceptibly. He saw it. We didn't talk much after that. There was no need. Something had shifted. Maybe just inside me, or maybe between us. The boat drifted, and I let it. We both did. As the sun started dipping low, we reeled in our untouched lines. He didn't look at me when he said, "Let's not tell your brother we came out here without him. He'll just get weird about it." I agreed. But the truth was, we'd already crossed into something we couldn't explain. Something my brother couldn't know. Not yet. By the time we got back to the shore, the sky had turned a soft lavender, and the silence between us was different. Not empty, just full of something neither of us knew how to name. And as I stepped out of the boat, his hand reached out, steady, gentle, to help me. I took it, just for a second too long. The days after the fishing trip moved slowly, each moment stitched with thoughts I couldn't push away. I kept replaying that afternoon, the silence, the nearness, the way his fingers felt when they brushed. Mine, like they were meant to linger. It wasn't just in my head. It couldn't be. Zion started coming around more, though not always when my brother was home. Sometimes he'd text me directly, casual at first. Memes, questions about music, a joke about how bad I was at fishing. But the messages came more often, and his replies stretched longer into the night. It felt dangerous in the quietest way, like standing on the edge of something thrilling and wrong all at once. One evening, a week after the lake, he asked if I wanted to come by and help him set up his new speakers. My brother was at work. I hesitated, thumb hovering over the screen. Then I typed, "Yeah, sure." His room smelled like cologne and old wood. The lights were dim. Music played low from a playlist he said he only shared with people he trusted. That word, trusted, stuck to me. We talked, laughed, argued over lyrics. At one point, while I was untangling wires beneath his desk, he leaned down and said, "You're not what I expected, you know." I looked up, startled. "What did you expect?" He smiled. Someone quieter. Or maybe someone I couldn't talk to. I don't know. You surprise me. My breath caught. Every second in that room felt too close, too charged. We weren't touching, not exactly, but we were too near not to feel the static building in the air. Later we sat side by side on his bed, watching a movie neither of us was really paying attention to. Our shoulders brushed, but this time neither of us moved. I could feel the heat from his skin. My heart thudded like it was trying to escape me. "I used to think your brother was the only reason I came around," he said, eyes fixed on the screen. "But lately, I think I'm starting to understand it was something else." I didn't respond. I couldn't. I was afraid to breathe wrong, afraid to ruin the moment or make it real. He glanced over. "Does that scare you?" Nodded. He didn't press, just whispered, "Me too." For a while, we sat in that fear together. Not touching, not speaking, just letting it swirl around us like smoke. And it felt almost safe, like we'd built a room out of tension where nothing could break unless one of us moved. Eventually, I left. It was late, and my hands were shaking. I couldn't tell if it was guilt or excitement, or both twisting together. My brother was already asleep when I got home. I stared at his closed door for a long time, wondering what he'd say, if he knew, if he could ever understand. I thought I'd feel ashamed, but I didn't. I felt awake. The next few days blurred into one long balancing act. I saw Zayn twice more, once for coffee, once just walking through town, pretending it was a coincidence. Each time, the space between us grew thinner, the words heavier, and yet still, no one had crossed the line. Then, late one night, my phone buzzed. "Zion, you still up?" I replied instantly. "Yeah." "Zion, I keep thinking about the lake, about you." My chest tightened. Me too." A pause. Then, "Zion, I don't know if I can keep pretending. Around your brother. Around you." I stared at the message for a long time. It wasn't a confession, but it was close. I didn't know how to answer. I didn't know what I was even hoping for. So I just typed, "Come." Over. The three dots danced for a few seconds, then vanished. But he didn't reply. Didn't come. I waited in the dark, heart racing, unsure if I was relieved or disappointed. The silence felt heavier than anything he could have said. The next morning, I saw him at our house. He was laughing, with my brother in the driveway, like nothing had ever happened, and maybe it hadn't. But when his eyes found mine across the yard, the smile faltered, just for a second. And I knew. We were both pretending, just not very well. That week stretched out like a wire pulled too tight. Every time I walked into a room, I could feel Zion before I saw him. His voice down the hall, his laugh in the kitchen, the sound of his boots at the back door. Each one was a reminder of what hadn't happened and everything that almost had. My brother, clueless and content, kept talking about how glad he was that the three of us were getting along more. "It's cool, you know," he said one afternoon while we were sorting through old video games. "Feels like you and Zion are finally bonding. I always thought you two had more in common than either of you realized." The words hit like a bruise. If he only knew. That weekend, we were all invited to a mutual friend's bonfire. It was supposed to be simple. Music, marshmallows, stories we'd all heard before. But nothing felt simple anymore. I almost backed out. Something in me knew it would be too hard to pretend all night. But then Zion texted, "Zion, you coming tonight?" Me, "I don't know." Zion, "I'll be there." And so, I went. The fire crackled high, sending sparks into the cool air. People gathered in uneven circles, laughter tangled with the hum of background music. Zion stood by the edge of the flames, beer in hand, talking with a group from his college. He looked up when I arrived, eyes flickering across my face like he was trying to read the kind of day I'd had. I didn't smile. He didn't either. As the night deepened, people peeled away into smaller groups, pairing off for whispered conversations in the dark or dancing barefoot in the damp grass. I found myself alone at the edge of the woods, needing space to breathe. That's when I heard him behind me. "I thought you might leave early," Zion said. "I almost did." He stepped closer. "You okay?" I nodded, even though I wasn't sure. My pulse was thudding again, that same low, restless drumbeat that only he could stir. "I keep thinking about what you said," he murmured. Or didn't say. I turned to look at him. The firelight caught the edge of his jaw, made his expression unreadable. "I don't know how to want something and not destroy it," I whispered. He reached up, gently brushing a leaf from my hair. "You think you'd destroy me?" "No," I said. "I think I'd destroy my brother." That silence settled between us again. Familiar now, like a language we both understood. "I hate this," he said softly. "Not you. Just hiding. Lying to people who trust us. Then why are we doing it?" He looked at me like the answer should have been obvious. "Because I don't want to let go." His hand found mine in the dark, just for a moment, just long enough for me to know he meant it. But the weight of the moment snapped when my brother's voice called from across the clearing. "Hey, you guys good?" We dropped each other's hands like they burned. I turned to see him walking toward us, hoodie half-zipped, eyes sleepy, but sharp. "Just getting some air," Zion said, too quickly. My brother raised an eyebrow but didn't question it. "Cool. Come back before someone burns their eyebrows off." He walked back toward the fire, and we stood there, hearts racing, shame mixing with something even heavier. Reality. "I should go," I said. Zion didn't stop me. "I'll call you tomorrow." But I knew he wouldn't, not right away, not while the lie was still fresh in both our throats. That night, lying in my bed, I stared at the ceiling, wondering how something so quiet, so careful, could feel. This loud. I kept replaying everything in my mind, his hand in mine, the fear in his voice, the way we both flinched when caught, like strangers with something to lose. The worst part wasn't the secrecy. It was the knowing that this wasn't just a crush, wasn't some fleeting heat. It was something deeper, messier, something that didn't belong in daylight. And still, even with all that weight on my chest, I found myself wishing I could go back to the lake, to the quiet, to the first moment I realized he saw me. The days after the bonfire moved differently, slower, heavier, like each hour was dragging itself through mud. Zion didn't call the next day, or the next. Part of me expected that silence. The other part kept glancing at my phone anyway, wishing for something that wouldn't come. I buried myself in distractions, cleaning, walking the dog, fake laughing at my brother's jokes. But nothing worked. The silence between me and Zion had stretched into something sharp, something jagged. And the worst part was pretending I didn't care. Then, 3 nights later, I found Zion sitting on the back porch, alone. It was late, nearly midnight, and the porch light cast his features in gold and shadow. He didn't hear me at first. Just sat there, head tilted back, eyes closed like he was listening to something only he could hear. "You're not supposed to be here," I said quietly. He looked up, startled, but not surprised. "I know. I just couldn't sleep." I didn't answer, just stood there, heart thudding, waiting for the next excuse, the next reason to leave this alone. But then he said, "I've been trying to stay away. I thought maybe if I gave it time, the feeling would go away." "And?" I asked, my voice a whisper. "It hasn't. It's gotten worse." I sat beside him, careful not to touch. The air between us was full of unsaid things. I could feel them pressing in, dense and hot. "I've never been afraid to want something before," he said, staring into the dark. "But this, it scares me. Because of my brother? Because it feels like something I can't have without hurting someone." That truth sat between us like a stone, unmovable. I thought of all the times my brother had trusted him, had trusted me, and how none of this would ever make sense if it came to light. "I don't want to lie anymore," I said. "But I don't know how to stop without breaking everything." Zayan looked at me then, really looked. Maybe we're already breaking it, just more slowly. We sat in silence for a while. The night hummed around us. Crickets, wind, the faint rustle of leaves. It was peaceful in a way, like the world was giving us one last quiet moment before it all collapsed. Finally, he reached over and took my hand. "I don't know where this goes," he said, voice low. "I just know that when I'm near you, I feel more like myself than I do anywhere else." My throat tightened. "Then don't stay away." He nodded, eyes glassy. "I won't." We didn't kiss. There was no dramatic embrace, just the quiet press of 2 hands holding each other under a soft porch light, like a promise we couldn't put into words yet. But the next morning, everything began to unravel. My brother found Zayan's jacket in the laundry room, one he hadn't worn the night of the bonfire, one he'd only worn here. "Did he crash here last night?" he asked casually, tossing it onto the counter. I froze. "He, came by late. We talked. He left after." My brother nodded slowly, but something in his eyes shifted. A question forming, a doubt waking up. Later that day, he asked, "Has anything weird been going on between you two?" I could feel my heart climbing into my throat. "Weird how?" "I don't know. You just seem different." And he's been acting off. I wanted to lie. I really did. But instead, I said nothing. And maybe that was worse. By evening, my brother wasn't speaking to either of us. Zayan texted, "He knows, not everything, but enough." And just like that, the safety we'd built crumbled. I don't know what happens next. I don't know if my brother will forgive me, or if Zayan and I can be something real outside of shadows and secrets. But I know this. I don't regret it. Not the fishing trip. Not the messages. Not the porch light. Because for the first time in my life, I let myself want something fully. even if it came wrapped in complication and risk. And sometimes, love doesn't arrive clean or easy. Sometimes it comes in pieces, in pauses, in promises made under the quiet hum of midnight. But it still matters. It still counts.